Hello, Kipsters. Today is Tuesday, March 23rd, and we will be continuing our work in the percussion family. Today, we learn about two of the more popular instruments, the snare drum and the bass drum, whereas yesterday we learned about the barred instruments, the marimba, the xylophone, the glockenspiel. Those specific instruments from yesterday are pitched instruments. Okay, they actually have a pitch to it. So if I were to play a C on the clarinet, if I were to play a note on the clarinet, I can make that same note on the marimba by playing the correct bar or the correct key. Whereas with the snare drum and bass drum and a lot of the other instruments that we'll be learning about in the percussion family, these are non-pitched instruments. So they don't necessarily have a note. They don't have a note they can play, but they have a sound that they make. So we're going to be learning a little bit about these two instruments, and we have a few videos today to show as well. The snare drum, or side drum, is a very common percussion instrument known for its shallow cylindrical shape and powerful staccato sound. You can find the snare in marching bands, concert halls, and rock and roll drum sets. Snare drums are usually played with drumsticks, although there are options which create a completely different sound, such as the drum brush. So what they mean is that there are different ways you can hit this drum or strike this drum. And it's not only just with drumsticks. They have brushes, they have wire, like different wire that's turned into string, and these different ways to hit the drum makes it sound differently. Although in this video we're going to watch drummers play with snare sticks, there are ways to make this instrument sound different depending on what you strike the drum with. We're going to watch this video. It's a little bit of a longer video, but this is a snare drum competition.
We'll give them at least 2 chances because I know that first time you guys are kind of nerve-wracking. So, we're going to start with our first contestant. Get him to say the name. School. Sean White's up to there.
that was very fun to watch and see. So you can see there, those guys are just trading back and forth, creating their own beat, and you hear that snare drum sound that's very recognizable. And of course, that sound is used particularly in marching band, but very much so in concert band as well. The next instrument, this is the bass drum. It is a large drum that produces a note of low, definite, or indefinite pitch. So that basically just means that if it's hit, or when it's struck, it does make a sound that has a sort of pitch, but it's not really definite. It's not like when I strike this, oh, this note is going to come out. So it does sometimes have a sound to it when you hear it, but it is not a definite pitch. Okay. Sometimes it is lower and you can hear that pitch, but it's not necessarily a pitched instrument. Bass drums vary in size and are used in various musical settings, including rock concerts, marching bands, concert bands, and orchestral music. Moving on, we have a couple videos for us to watch, and these are much shorter. Good. Now I'm going to pause the video there and just now finish the rest. But this is what you would call a bass line. Now you see how all of the different bass drums are smaller, bigger. And these instruments, the smaller ones obviously have a higher pitch or a higher sound than the lower ones. And the lower ones are the ones you're really going to see mostly in the concert band. These are marching bass drums, so they're easier to hold as well compared to a normal bass drum. Concert bass drum sometimes looks a lot different than these, but you could also use these for your concerts, your concert music as well. But if you look at these people would have like harnesses on, and they would have them like the big bass drum strapped to their body, and they'd be banging it on the sides. If you've ever seen the OSU marching band or any other marching band. But yeah, this was a percussion bass drum ensemble, and I'm sure these people were all in marching band, and they all just kind of did a little show for their friends. All right, moving on to the next video here. We have one little video, and this person is playing the drum set. So on the drum set, the cool thing about the drum set is that it has more than one drum on it. So it has the snare drum, but if you look at the front there, you'll see a big circle on the bottom, and that is the bass drum. And so how you play the bass drum while you're playing the snares, if you've never seen one in action, you would play the bass drum with your foot. So you're pressing a pedal that's on the ground, and as you press that pedal, there's like a little drumstick that is on the pedal, and as you press it, it just automatically hits the bass drum. So we'll see if we can see some of that in this video.
Hi, my name is Josh, and I'm auditioning for drum set and for America's Got Talent.
Awesome. And as you can see, if you were watching closely, you could see his right foot was moving a lot, and that was him pressing that bass pedal. But they're also on, instead of just the snare drum and the bass drum, you could also see that there were cymbals on there. He had a few cymbals, and then he also had a couple tom drums, which tom drums are very similar to bass drums. They just have, or sorry, snare drums. They just have a more warm, darker sound compared to the snare drum's high pitched, buzzy sound. So if you ever have interest in drum set, there are plenty of videos to watch on YouTube. All it takes is just purchasing the drum set and a lot of practice, but a very versatile instrument and very much so needed in the musical world. If this sort of instrument interests you. Moving on to our last quiz, we have a couple questions today, guys. The true or false? The bass drum is played using your hands. Now, we didn't talk about this, but we saw in that video of the bass drum players playing with, were they playing with their hands or were they playing with mallets? True or false, the bass drum is played using your hands. Go ahead and think about it. Remember, if you can remember that video, and then answer your question. I'll give you 10 more seconds. Of course, any percussion instrument you can technically play with your hands, but the bass drum is played with a mallet. So this question is going to be false. And the bass drum isn't played with the same stick as a snare drum. Snare drum sticks are usually made out of wood. And although bass drum mallets their handles can be made out of wood, usually the top of the mallet is I can't really say it's cottony, it's cushiony, it's kind of clothy. Okay, it's not really necessarily a piece of wood. It's an actual I can't think of what the material is made of. String sometimes is made of like a ball of string. That's a good thought. They're made of sometimes balls of string. So if you take a round top, and then you wrap around a bunch of string around that, and that is what you would play the bass drum with. Our last question here. True or false? The snare drum sounds higher than the bass drum. True or false? The snare drum sounds higher than the bass drum. Give you 10 seconds to think of this one. 10, 9, 8, 4, 3. And of course, this one is true. It is called the bass drum because it has a bass sound. And if we don't know already, bass is the lowest sound you can have. So I have my bass clef, my bass instruments that read in the bass clef. I have my bass singers, and I have my bass drum, which is the slowest. I have my double bass, which is the lowest of the violin family. And of course, like I just said, the bass drum, which is the lowest of the drum family or the percussion family. Okay, so if you answer this true, then you are correct and you can submit, and we are done with this video for today. So as always, Mr. Isaac has 3 things for you. You are kind, you are smart, you are important. Thank you for tuning in today. Tomorrow we will be continuing working with our percussion instruments. And until then, have an awesome evening and an afternoon.